All right. Hello, everybody. It is Friday night, December the 9th, and we are working on the gingerbread project. So welcome to the Jelly Roll Club if you are new with us. My name is Yvonne, and the Jelly Roll Club is a sew-along group, and we make all kinds of things, mostly with jelly rolls, but we also use other sizes of pieces, such as pre-cuts like 5 inches or 10 inches. So let's see who's with us tonight. I see there's almost 20 people out there already. So it's 8 o'clock. So I started my stream about 30 seconds early to allow the computer to catch up with me. So let's see who's out there. I see Susan is here. Vicky and Kay and M. Miller is here. So hello, everybody. I see Sue. Lots of people with us already. Welcome. If you are new, please give this a thumbs up and subscribe, ring the bell so that you get notified anytime that I set up a stream or I set up a new video to upload. But welcome, everybody. Okay, so say hi to each other in the chat. Tell us where you're from. And I'm so excited that you're here on a Friday night. So I'm going to switch my camera view so you can see what's happening with my hands. And let me tell you about what we're doing tonight. Tonight, I'm going to do something that's slow sewing. It is a back-basted needle turn applique, and I'm going to show you what that's all about. So first, let me switch my camera view and let me show you what supplies you need for this particular method. Now, this method is not fast, so if you're planning on having these ready by Christmas Eve, you may not want to use this method, but you may want to stay for the duration of the video because you may want to try this for another project. All right. So as you can see, tonight we're doing the two colored bells. So the bow is red in the diagram, and I printed these in black and white because they're just easier for me to use on my light box. So hello to everyone who's just jumping in. We're going to start tonight with the bell, and let me show the supplies that you're going to need. So you're going to need a piece of fabric that's big enough to cover your bell. This one is bigger than what I need, but this one is 5 by 6, and I have 2 of them because I'm going to make this a double-sided bell. And so I have 2 of my, and this is just fabric, this is not felt, of my cookie fabric. So this is my cookie fabric. My cookies are a little bit burnt, and so I thought this looked like cookies to me. I also have a 5-inch 5 by 5, a little irregular scrap, and that's going to be for the body of the bell. I'm using a lemon yellow. And then I'm using, this is a scrap jelly roll strip, which is 2.5 inches wide, and this is like 4.5. So this is like 4.5 by 2.5. This is 5 by 5. And this is like 5 by 6. I'm also going to need, for this particular method I'm going to show you tonight, and each night I show you something different. And the reason I show you something different is because I want you to try or learn different techniques. If you missed last night, don't worry, because all of the videos are archived and they're under the playlist called the Gingerbread Project. So if you missed any of the evenings, go back and watch from the beginning and watch them all the way through in order, because I teach something different every single night and they kind of build on each other, okay? So let me just show you where we are. I started with felt, right? The swirly twirly cookie. I made that in 2, fabric and felt, and I have finished his edge. And look at how nice and flat he is when he's made with fabric. He's quilted. And he's kind of puffy when he's made with felt, right? And I'm trying different techniques as I go. The next thing that I did was my little star. And where did I drop him? Oh, he's here. So my little star, he still needs buttons in the middle, but he's getting there. And I used like a big rusted blanket stitch on him. The next thing that I did was my little hat, and I made him out of fabric. And I also did a little blanket stitch on there because I kind of like it in different sizes. So these are reversible. And this is my little Santa hat, but with a little bit of puffy felt there on the edges. So I put a little bit of polyfill in there for that little hat, and he still needs his other brim, so I'll get there. I also tried my light bulbs using 2 methods. This one I tried stitching by machine, and I just put a little starch on these last night and laid them flat. This is all sewn by hand, and I think I like the hand sewn one a little bit better. It looks rustic and it matches my other ones. I'm still trying to decide if I like the great big blanket stitch or if I like the little fine blanket stitch. And I think I like the big rustic blanket stitch. So for my other pieces, I'm probably going to finish them like this. But these are just experimental, and I'm going to put these on a tree that my grandkids can play with. So I'm not too sad if they play with them. But that's what these are for. The next thing that we worked on was the cookie, and the little kind of irregular cookie. This one is bobbin work, so you guys can see I used yarn for this one. And I kind of started last night, so I showed you guys how to do some bobbin work last night, which is putting a big chunky thread in your bobbin and sewing it upside down. And so that's what I did with that one. And this is another cookie that I'm working on, and I still have to stitch that down, and that was the one that was embroidered on both sides, and it looked identical. Okay, so that's where we are. I'm still playing with those two, and so I'll continue to finish these, and I'll show you as I finish them up. But for today, we're going to use the bell. We're going to use these supplies, and then I'm going to pull a needle out of my needle nest that's a sharps. So this is not an embroidery or a crewel needle, but it's actually a needle turn needle. And so this one is, it's a little bit sharp, and that's why I guess that's why they're called sharps, right? And that's what I'm going to be using. All right, so this is the supplies. In addition to this, I'm going to be using 100% cotton threads in a variety of colors. I'm going to be using this yellow Gutermann, and it's literally just 100% cotton sewing thread. And sometimes I use silk thread. So these are all little tiny spools of silk thread, and it's a 100 weight, and it's very, very thin, which is why I like it for applique. All right, so the method that I'm going to show you guys today is called the back basted method. And if you have never seen this method of needle turn, in traditional needle turn, you take the pieces and you simply put your thumb against it, you push it under with the needle, right? You clip the edges and you sew, right? So you turn the edge with your needle, you get it started, and then you come through and you sew along the edge. But this way is a little bit different. So I'm going to show you a method called back basting, and it makes for extremely accurate needle turn applique. So if you want to do needle turn applique that has smaller pieces, this is a great thing to practice on. So we're going to start with the little bell. For this, I'm going to use a light box. And I'm going to let it turn on. And this is just an inexpensive light box. It cost me like $10. I think I paid like $10.99 for it. It wasn't even fancy. And it's like an ultra thin light box. You see it? It's like super thin. And I can adjust the brightness on it. So from very, very bright to not so bright. But I'm going to lay my pattern on there. And then I'm going to lay my fabric on here with the wrong side like this. And so you have to keep that in mind, the direction. So I'm going to lay that there because I'm going to draw the piece that I'm going to applique on the back side of my fabric. And I'm going to draw that. You can draw it with a pencil or you can draw it with a regular ink pen. And I'm simply going to take and I'm going to outline. And I'm never going to see this line. And I'm going to simply outline the exact layout of that bell piece that I'm going to needle turn applique. And so once I trace it, just like this, that little bell shape is going to give me a very smooth and accurate needle turn applique. One of the things that I want you guys to note about this process is that it helps if the fabric has been washed and not starched because it allows it to turn easier. So floppy fabric works pretty well for this. And if you notice, this is super soft and it's been washed And there's the little bell shape. Can you guys see that? So I've got the little bell shape that I'm going to applique. And then the next thing that I'm going to draw on here is I'm also going to draw the bow. So I'm going to draw the image of all of the pieces that I'm going to applique on the wrong side of the fabric. And then this comes this way. This is the little bow that goes on the bell. And then I'm bringing them that way. And this is the kind of ink that's a permanent ink. And that can stay there. If you're doing this on a dark fabric, you may want to use a white Crayola colored pencil. So if you have like black fabric that you're doing, be sure to think about that. So these are the two parts. And let me move this light box out because it makes it hard to see. These are the two parts of the bell. And I have drawn those on the back side of my fabric. And as you can see, I can't see those lines on the front at all. So hi everybody if you just got here. All right, so I have drawn this on the back of my image. And now I'm going to show you why it's called back basted. So this is my fabric, and I'm going to put it where it belongs, which is the front. But I'm going to lay it, and I'm going to turn my piece like this because I want it to be on a bias. If you notice how much stretch that has and how much stretch it has this way, it will really help me to turn my edges if it's on the bias, so I can get all these little curvy pieces rather than the straight of grain. Because if you notice, there's no stretch this way, and there's almost no stretch that way. There's a little, but not a lot. So I'm going to put my on point, right? And I'm going to lay that bell. And it helps to use your light box, and this is why I use one, because I want to make sure that that's centered, right? So I want to make sure that that yellow fabric covers everything that's going to be the bell portion. And it does, so I have to move it. And now I'm going to just pin it in place. So I'm going to take a few little tiny pins, and I'm just going to pin that yellow right in place, just like this, so that it doesn't scooch around on me. And this method of turning is called back basted. And you draw your entire layout on the wrong side of the fabric. So if you have a table runner or a block, you draw all the pieces on the back and then you sew them one at a time. Now, why am I starting with the body of the bell? The reason I'm starting with the body of the bell is because the bow will get sewn on top. So first goes what's underneath, and then I sew what's on top, okay? So here I have it. It's prepared and ready to start back basting. Yellow on this side, I laid it on point, and now I flipped it to this side. All right, so now I'm going to take my needle, and I can take any needle I want. I could take even a big needle, and I'm going to run basting stitches all along this drawn line, right? And you're probably going to think, wow, she's crazy. Why is she running a stitch all the way around? But you're going to see why in just a minute. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take a thread that is high contrast. That means it's very obvious that it's my basting thread, right? And eventually it'll get removed, so it doesn't matter. So I'm going to take, and I'm going to use a double strand of red thread because I want to be able to see clearly which is my basting stitch, right? Because this stitch will get removed as we sew. And you're probably thinking, wow, this is a lot of work. And it is, but it makes for an extremely, extremely accurate turned piece, especially if you have a lot of curvy lines, wavy lines. It keeps your needle turn pieces from shifting around. It is probably the singular most accurate way to do needle turn. All right, I have a quick question. How many of you have tried needle turn and were scared to death because of the amount of work that you think that it is? If this is your first time doing needle turn applique, just let us know. If you're a master at needle turn applique, tell us what your favorite way of doing needle turn is. And do you wash your fabric or not wash your fabric? Why don't you answer some of those questions? Let's see who's with us. I see Yvette from Philadelphia, from Philly. I have family in Philly. Let's see. We have Sue from Florida. I have lots of people on there now. We started out with like 15 people. Now we've got like 50. Okay. So I'm going to double strand this, not single strand, right? And I'm going to capture this end right here. Don't you love when your stuff gets tangled? I'm going to let that dangle here. Just let it hang down. And then I'm just going to tie a knot on that. So now that I have my double strand and I've tied my knot, and how I tie my knots, I'm sure you've seen it. You just grab the opposite side, you swirl it, twirl it around the needle a few times, and then push it through. And that gives you that little chunky knot that I like. So I'm going to start over here. And I'm going to come about 1/4 of an inch into the bell, and I'm going to start stitching, and I'm going to take some basting stitches. And they don't have to be really small. They can actually be larger stitches, and that's why I'm using a bigger needle. And I'm just going to baste along that line, just like that. And this is why this method is called back basting. Like I said, if you want to make these, and if it gets a knot or two or whatever, it's not the end of the world. If you are going to be making these in time for the holidays, you may want to use one of the other methods. Maybe a fusible method with a blanket stitch. And if you're doing them with felt, I found at a craft store yesterday some felt and foam tacky glue. And it says instant grab for felt and foam. So I'm going to try this. I've never used it before. So if you've tried this, you let me know how that works, because I'm going to glue a couple of mine just to test it out. Let's see. I just learned about needle turn applique. I admire the look of it, right? And I know handwork seems intimidating to me too. And look, you just make it smooth. But this method is actually pretty easy because you're just following the line to baste it. You have all your parts already laid out, and so you know they're going to land in the right spot. And it keeps the fabric from shifting around on you to do it this way. All right. So you can see I'm just kind of going up and down, up and down. And on the handout that had the stitches, this is a running stitch. And that's the reason I made the handout. So in a running stitch, you're simply gathering the fabric. You're stabbing that needle up and down. And then I'm going to turn the corner right here. I'm going to stop right in that corner, and I'm going to pivot right there. And I went off the rails just a hair, but I think I'm going to be all right. It says the first time is with the gnomes. Yeah, straight stitch them down. I love using for applique, I love using the interfacing method. That's one of my favorites. And I also like the starch method, but I'm bound and determined to master beautiful handwork. So we shall see. I may live to regret this moment because I'm starting another big quilt where I'm working by hand, and I may live to regret that moment, but we'll see. Or it'll just go in the pile with my other UFOs. How many of you guys have a bunch of UFOs in your sewing room? Go ahead and confess. You're amongst friends. I have a total of 15 quilt tops right now, friends, that I need to quilt. That's a lot. But but the tops are finished and they have borders. They're just not machine quilted yet. So I suspect that next summer I'm going to spend a lot of time free motion quilting. All right. See how quickly that's working out? And so I'm just going to, I have to make sure that I keep smoothing it out so that it's nice and smooth, right? And then I haven't puckered this, and I flip it over to look, and I see that it's not really puckered, so it's okay. If you do pucker it, guess what you can do? You can take this, and you can take your iron, and you can give it a press to make sure there's no waves in it. And look, nice and flat. It sinks your stitches. Because whenever you're sewing, you act, and especially if you're doing handwork, you can stretch your fabric a little bit. So if you want it to be back where it was before you started working with it, you simply just give it a little press and you keep on going. All right, whoever has the most number of UFO wins. Just kidding. No, nobody wins when we have UFOs, right? It's better to get those things finished. So my goal next year is to finish 1 UFO per month. Before I start any more new quilts, it's 1 UFO. And that's why I'm doing the table runner of the month, is because I'm going to refrain from giant quilt projects in order to make sure that I get all of those UFOs in the hands of people that I love. All right. And some of them will probably get tied. All right. And so look at how quickly we got to the end of the shape, right? Look at that. And so now I'm going to end like this, just like that, a running stitch, and I'm going to pull. And now I have this completely basted. So when I flip it to the other side, this is going to be my finished shape of my bell, right? I can go ahead and get rid of these pins, put them in this little micro tomato that's sitting over here. These are my little short applique pins. That's why they're in a separate little baby tomato. All right, so let's see what we've got. So now that I've got this, I can take all of these pins, goodbye, and I'm just going to trim that off. And now I'm ready. Yeah, I think I'm definitely going to try to tie more quilts next year. I'm going to do several free motion, but I'm going to tie some. All right, friends. So now that we have this here, you're going to see all of this excess. And so what I'm going to do now, and this is where duckbill scissors come in handy. These are serrated edge, and I love these. These are by Clover, but I like these duckbill. And the reason I like these duckbill is because I can shove it in here, and I can kind of prevent myself from cutting this on the bottom, right? Because this is the front side of my cookie. And so I'm going to slide that in there, and I'm going to trim it off so that it has the shape, right? But not too close. And so I'm going to just give myself about a 1/2 inch border all the way around. And like I said, this is why I like my duckbill scissors, because they're handy for all this little detail work. And so I'm just going to come around and trim. I don't have to be too fussy. Like I said, don't be afraid to try this. This little tiny ornament might be enough for you. You might try it on a single thing and go, well, I'm never doing that again. And that's happened to me several times, where I've started something and I'm like, well, this is not the method that works for me. I'm still trying to conquer paper piecing. I'll get there. All right. And then this is going to get trimmed because that will fit underneath the bow, and so I won't need all that extra. And save all of these because I'm going to be using these for collage work. So save all these if you're doing collage work. All right. So there we have it. And you're like, what is that crazy thing that she's doing? So now starts the fun part. Now starts the needle turn. Excuse me. I'm still getting over my sickness. So if you notice, these scissors have a really sharp edge right here, super sharp, and this is what I'm going to be using. So I'm going to take one of my sharps, which is what I use for needle turn. It's long and thin and very sharp, and I'm going to thread that with single thread of my 100% cotton thread. And just going to untwist my spool. So that's how you start these, friends. I don't know if everybody knows that these untwist, but these untwist so that you can come back later, put that in there, twist it back. So you have 10, yes, welcome to the world of UFOs. I think if you're a quilter, it's like a requirement. You're not allowed to be in the quilting club unless you have a bunch of UFOs. All right. So now I'm going to just kind of lick that, push that in, and I'm going to be using a single thread. And it helps when you use thread conditioner. I took my Thread Magic upstairs because I was working in my upstairs room and watching television one night, and I don't know what I've done with it. I think it rolled under a piece of furniture. Okay, so now I'm going to come to the back, and I'm going to start my needle right beside. I'm going to push this to the side right there. Right, that's my basting thread. Just shove it over to the side, and let me lower my... Let me see if you can still see that. Can you guys see that? So I'm going to push this to the side, and I'm going to stick my needle right above there, just like that, so that I can see where I'm at on the front side. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm going to pull out or clip. I'm going to trim a little bit, pull it back. I'm going to trim a little bit more. And I'm going to clip, but not go up to the line, about every ½ inch or so. And I'm going to reach there. And then I'm going to pinch with my finger. I've got my needle there. I'm going to clip a couple of these stitches. And I'm going to stop because this is where I'm going to come in with my needle. I'm going to pull that out. I'm going to turn. Shove that in there with my finger to get it started. And I'm going to crease right where those stitch lines are. So you see those little indentations that I had from my basting line? Now I can follow that line to turn this under just like that. And I'm going to hold it with my finger and I'm going to crease it with my needle. And so those little marks that are now left, those little tiny holes from my back basting thread, are what's going to guide my stitches. So now I can stitch little segments at a time. I'm going to grab it with my finger and I'm going to come in and let that thread dangle. I'm going to come in and I'm going to start in the back of the fabric, and I'm going to take a little teeny tiny nibble, shove that all the way in, which is why it's called needle turn, under my needle. And then I'm going to take a tiny nibble and I'm going to come out like this. Try to get it right in that crease. And I'm going to come out. And I'm going to give it a little tug. I'm holding it with my fingernail and I'm going to give it a little tug. And that little starting point will end up underneath the bow. And so I'm going to shove it underneath. Like I said, I'm going to work in sections. Give it a tiny little clip to get it where I want it. And then I'm going to come in and just take a couple of little teeny tiny stitches, and I come out right where that edge is and I pull it through. And I want to not trap that red, so I need to get rid of it. And I'm going to come through here and I'm going to give it a little tiny shove, and now I'm ready to stick the next little section. So I have this next little section, and I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to shove it underneath just like that. I'm going to tease it underneath there. Bye, Jody. We will see you later, okay? And so I'm just simply taking my needle and I am pushing that underneath, and I'm taking my fingernail and I'm coming to the back and I'm pulling that stitch out so that it doesn't get trapped, because I don't want to be able to see that. And now I'm coming back to the front. I'm going to crease it with my fingernail, and I'm going to sew little tiny stitches along that edge. Coming from the back into the front. And this is why I'm using thread that matches the bell rather than the background. Now you could use thread that matches the background, but I prefer to use thread that matches the applique piece I'm doing, just because, look at this. All these things are getting in my way. Just because when you use the thread that matches the front, it just doesn't show as much. And there you are, little teeny tiny stitches along that edge. And like I said, these pieces, you can pull them out from the back. Just make sure that you come back here and you pinch them out so that they're not trapped. Have you guys ever used this method before of needle turn? And like I said, you can grab it with your hand, and this is the beauty of it, is it doesn't get distorted. And you're just sticking that in there. Take your needle, turn it under. I like flipping it this way, if you see. And I'm going to make sure that that edge, I'm going to keep shoving it under. Sometimes this is where I use my little pimple popper, and I'm going to make sure that it goes right where those stitches were, where I pulled this out. You can also use a pin or another needle to stick that back in there if it doesn't want to go. Just take and shove it. And you're pushing it back with the edge of this needle. And that's why it's called needle turn. And then you're coming in here and you're making little teeny tiny stitches along that crease. And it actually goes faster than you realize. Once you get a little bit of practice, you're like, oh, that's not so bad. Right? I'm going to take and I'm going to clip the next one. Just like this. I can pull it out, or I can clip it about every 3. But I don't work too far ahead. About maybe 3 stitches out I pull. And then I'm going to take and trim. And that's going to be my stopping point where I'm going to readjust. And so I'm going to stick that under there. Crease that edge. And work along that edge. And like I said, this gives you very, very accurate needle turn pieces. Because needle turn can get kind of wiggly, especially because you're using fabric that has been washed. No, the scissors are not supposed to be part of the ornament. You got to get those things out of there, out of the way. And then you just stop. And again, you just take it and you take your needle and you push it under. Just like that. You take and you push it. And you roll it with your finger just like that. And then you crease it along that edge. And then you keep going. And this makes some very beautiful, beautiful, invisible needle turned applique. If you want an heirloom piece, this is the way to do it. And the other reason to wash your fabrics before you do all of this is so that when you do finish your applique pieces, they are smooth and beautiful and they don't end up distorted. And so you just literally just keep on going. Look at that. Pull, pull, pull. Get rid of all those extra threads. take your needle, this is why we call it needle turn, and you are literally shoving that edge underneath just like that. See it? And you're pushing it towards that. And I'm creasing it. I take the side of my needle and I crease it. And if it's ready to pull out, I take the back of this big needle and I just pull it out like this as I go. And then I take that edge and look, push it under. Crease it with my fingernail just like that. And it makes a really beautiful edge with a very teeny tiny invisible stitch. So if needle turn is one of the things on your bucket list, this method is different than the traditional needle turn method. And I really like this way. I don't know about you guys, but even though it's slow, I think it's super accurate and I like it. Oh no, Vi, you broke your wrist. I'm so sorry to hear that. Super easy. This bigger needle makes it easier to do too, the longer needle. And like I said, it makes little teeny tiny baby stitches. You do need to wear your reading glasses. And then when you look at the back, you can see that my stitches are actually landing right on that line, and I can feel that from the back. So you can see my stitches are so tiny. Look at those stitches. Itty bitty tiny. You can barely even see them. And they're landing right on that line, and look at here. When you have this edge, those stitches actually fall in that crease, and that's where you get that beautiful, smooth, needle turned look. So what do you guys think about this? On a scale from 1 to 10, how would you rate this? And like I said, I can always press it if it looks like it's puckering the other way. And look at that. I love this little teeny tiny edge and those little itty bitty stitches. And just keep it smooth. Don't tug on those strings because they will pucker if you tug too hard. All right, so who's going to give back basting a try? You're going to let me know in the comments if you're going to try this method, back basting. All right. How we turn the corner is the same way that you normally turn other corners. Is you just have to clip that curve. So when I'm coming up to my curve, I'm going to go ahead and clip the next piece. So I'm going to clip, and I'm going to clip right before. I'm going to leave a little bit before that edge, and I'm going to clip this corner again. Just like that. And then I'm going to pull this out. There's my big fat needle. With the back end of the needle, I'm just going to take it in there and dig it out. And it just makes it easier. I move ahead of myself about 3 of these stitches. Doing it with a double thread leaves those little tiny holes. And so those little tiny holes are the ones that I use. And look, you stick it with that big needle and roll it under. And then you use the tip of the needle and the side of your finger. So use the tip of the needle and the side of your finger to shape that, and then you run your fingernail across that. And then I take the side of my needle and I push that under. I get it nice and smooth underneath there. Push that with my needle and I turn it under. I'm going to take that out of my way. Pull out one more stitch. And I'm going to turn that edge under like that with my finger. And then see how it wants to look like a little bit of a square. I'm going to take this needle and I'm going to push that into place. And like I said, you roll it with the tip of the needle. You just take and you roll it under, just like that. I hold it with my other thumb. And then I shove it into place and then I smooth it out. And then when I get to this corner, I just make sure that I round that corner. So this right here, I pinch it with my fingers. I stick it under there. And when I get to that spot where I'm going to sew, I'm just going to make sure I use my needle to shove it and get it super smooth. I'm going to run my needle underneath that edge and push the excess and make sure that that lays flat on the inside, because I want that seam to lay flat and not be bunched up in that corner. Does that make sense? And so I just come around the corner. Just like that with my little tiny stitches. I'm going to get to this spot right before that little hump, and I'm going to just take and shove it in with my needle, just like that. It's wanting to come out, so I'm going to turn it. Sometimes I lick it. I know I shouldn't lick, but I'm a licker. Sometimes I lick it, and then I stick it. Lick it and stick it. That does not sound appropriate. I'm sorry. But this is a great little project. And see, I'm holding it with one finger, and I'm manipulating it with the needle to get it exactly where I want it to go. Take and you just flip, just like that with the tip of that needle. And you run it smooth underneath like that. And it's a great little project. There's the edge of my bell now. I've made that corner the way I want, right? And so I'm going to come into that corner, and I'm going to put one stitch right where I want that corner to turn, and I'm going to come out with the needle. It is a great snowy day project. And if we have snow days this year at school, I'm going to be needle turn appliquing my little fingers off. I think I'm going to start a snowman project. There is one of my Facebook friends, and she is also in the teaching profession. She's a librarian, and she makes a snowman block every time she has a snow day. So I think that I'm going to start doing the same thing, but I'm going to do it needle turn. All right. And there you have it, friends. This is the back basting method. I'm just going to come around here, and I'm going to finish it till I get to this end of the bell. And then I'm going to do the same exact thing, but I'm going to start with the little bow. And then when I'm done, I'm going to have this with a little extra, and I'm going to put these right sides together and sew around just like I did this one where I stitched it and then turned it inside out. And so there you have it, friends. This is the back basted method for needle turn applique. I hope that you guys will try this. Look at what a smooth, beautiful edge you get on that needle turned edge. And when you turn it sideways, look at that. It is super smooth and super pretty. And even on the back side, look at how tiny those stitches end up. They're almost invisible. I really, really love it. But I'm going to include, just so you guys know, and let me switch my camera view so you guys can see me. Just so you know, I've already finished the gingerbread boy and the gingerbread girl. I'm working on the gingerbread house, and I'm going to be posting those later on tonight on the Facebook page and on the YouTube channel under the community tab. And I'm going to post them on the website. So the website, if you don't know where my website is, it's www.jellyrollclub.com. Super easy to remember because it's the same name as my Facebook page. It's the same name as my logo. So it's literally www.jellyrollclub, just like that, .com. And so if you look for Jelly Roll Club on Facebook, you just put an @ symbol in front of it, @ Jelly Roll Club. If you find me on YouTube, it's the same way. And so this is the method that I'm going to be using for this bell, so you're going to see it. I think this is going to be really cute. I wanted to make one out of fabric and practice this. So I hope you guys had a wonderful evening, and I hope that you're going to give back basted needle turn a try. Like I said, maybe you just do the bow. Or maybe you just do the bell and you just give it a try, because we don't need any more UFOs in our sewing room. I don't need any more, and you guys don't need any more. All right, friends, I told you I would try to teach you a different technique every single night. So if you want to go back and look at all the other things I talked about, this series is a skill builder. And so pick up some of these skills and you just don't know when you're going to use them. This is a great way to practice your hand sewing. All right, friends, you guys have a wonderful Friday night. It's 8:45, and I'm going to let you guys go because you're probably as tired as I am. I've had a long week, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. All right, friends, you have a great night. Let me know what you think. Drop a comment down below, okay? I'll see you guys later. Bye, everybody. Good night. Bye, guys.